Queen Elizabeth had no regrets. She was at peace in the days before she died, and her thoughts dwelled upon her fate, on her father, and upon the sheer beauty of Balmoral. Despite the family troubles that dogged the last years of her life, her late Majesty Elizabeth II met her Maker at peace and with no regrets, according to senior churchman who was with her at Balmoral just days before she passed away. The Right Reverend Dr. Anne Greenshields, then moderator of the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland, spent a few days at the castle last summer as a guest of the Queen, as was traditional. Her late Majesty was frail, he told me, but that in a series of one-to-one conversation, he found her mentally sharp and contemplative, preoccupied in particular with her faith and that of her father, George VI. It would be normal for a moderator to talk about matters of faith, but I was very interested in how much she wanted to talk about her own, he recalled this week. It was her platinum jubilee year, and so she was looking back. She had remarkable recall. She had no regrets and was very much at peace. She also mentioned her father, George VI, and the great influence his faith had on her. Dr. Greenshield said he had been surprised that his visit had not been cancelled, as he found Queen Elizabeth frailer than he expected. The Queen had wanted him to be there, however, and to deliver the sermon he was due to preach at Crete Church, just as Her Majesty had been determined to see Boris Johnson in Liz Truss for the prime ministerial handover. Dr. Greenshields explained that he had been one of very few visitors at the time, as the number had been reduced for fear of tiring the Queen. There were just 6 people at dining during the 3 nights he was there, including Sophie Wessex, now the Duchess of Edinburgh, the Princess Royal and her husband, Commander Sir Timothy Lawrence, John Warren, the Queen's horse trainer and racing manager, and the Queen herself. During those final meals, the Queen spoke of her faith and continued to do so in private conversation with Dr. Greenshield. Her love of Scotland and Balmoral in particular came through. At one point in our conversation, she went to the window and said, "Who would not want to be here?" She was in a very peaceful, private place. She was at peace. Dr. Greenshield, who stepped down from his post as moderator in May, delivered the homily at the service of Thanksgiving for the life of Elizabeth II at St. Giles Cathedral, Edinburgh, on September 11th last year, and attended her funeral at Westminster Abbey. When she died, Dr. Greenshield continued, I thought of my mother and how she, too, had spoken about her faith just before she died, and that normally she would never do so. So, I do wonder if people, even subconsciously, are getting ready for the end. It's also very common when people are dying to reflect on their parents, as the Queen did. She also mentioned an American religious leader who had a big impact on her, and although she didn't mention his name, and I didn't interrupt to ask, I did wonder if it was Billy Graham, whom she met. Queen Elizabeth and the moderator also talked about the Church of Scotland. She was just a member, not in a high position as she was in the Church of England as Supreme Governor, and in a way I think she liked that. Queen Elizabeth's religious faith had formed the background of her 70-year reign. She had always considered her life and duties as queen through the prism of her Christian faith, and it seems that faith remained undimmed to the end. When the Dean of Westminster, David Hoyle, began Elizabeth II's funeral, 11 days after her September 8th death, he told the congregate and the millions watching around the world that they were there to mourn her loss and recall her long life of selfless service. But he added, they had gathered in sure confidence to commit her to the mercy of God our Redeemer. Hers was a strong, and in the best possible way, a simple faith shaped by attending church every Sunday, hymn singing, the Book of Common Prayer, and the Bible. One of her most precious possessions was a book of prayers specially put together for her by Geoffrey Fisher, the then Archbishop of Canterbury, to help her prepare for her 1953 coronation. For Elizabeth II, being a Christian was more than a matter of personal spirituality. As monarch, she was supreme governor of the Church of England at a time when Britain was becoming more secular and more diverse in religious faith. But she found a way to bridge any divide between the church and the rest of society in a way that few bishops manage. She managed to communicate her beliefs both with conviction but without proselytizing, notably during her Christmas Day broadcast. Her funeral was unashamedly Anglican, yet there was space for a role for leaders of other faiths too. At time, Queen Elizabeth had been reluctant to discuss her own funeral arrangements, but she did eventually, choosing to include some of her favorite hymns. Among them was the Lord's My Shepherd, also sung at her wedding to Prince Philip in 1947. It's fitting, not least of us expressing her state of faith. Yeah, though I walk through that dark vale, yet will I fear none ill. For thou art with me, and thou and serve me comfort still. The monarch's own road, the script, was placed with the orb and the imperial state crown on the altar of St. George's Chapel, Windsor, during her committal, as if to say that the burden of office was gone. Elizabeth Alexandra Mary Windsor was no longer a queen, but a Christian soul like any other believer, and one who had once written in a little-known book for the Bible Society that she was very grateful to God for his steadfast love. I have indeed seen his faithfulness. Thank you for watching and listening to me, and so sorry for pronunciations.